is my pleasure to be here today and to introduce you to this next section. So the first relation of this important section of the potential of exercise and dietary approach to modify and rejuvenate elderly people will be presented by my colleague Stephen Anton from the Department of Physiology and Aging, University of Florida, United States. Okay, so please.
Okay, thank you very much again for the invitation. And here is the title of my talk, Commonalities and Lifestyle Factors Among Octogenarians. So what I want to do in the next 15 minutes or so, look at if we can identify common lifestyle dietary behaviors among individuals with exceptional longevity who have very healthy lifespans, not just longevity, but healthy longevity. And then see if we can identify ways we might be able to mimic what they do. Just as a broad overview, I like to show this slide because the theme of our center at the University of Florida's Institute on Aging is preservation of mobility, understanding the factors that drive mobility loss, the multi-complexity mobility loss. And so what this slide shows is kind of the goal, which is to have high levels of mobility, high levels of function into our very old age, where everything, our muscle mass is preserved, our cognitive function is preserved, and we're actively engaged in life. Unfortunately, this is not the case for many people. Many individuals, we see a much more rapid decline due to a variety of factors, chronic disease conditions, poor lifestyle factors, ultimately resulting in disability and the need for help living. And so they're no longer independent. And so we want to preserve independence for as long as possible. And there are populations in this world that are areas in this world that seem to have a high proportion of individuals that we would consider super agers. And those are the blue zones that probably you're familiar with the term. I don't know how much in depth you're familiar with these people. So I'll take a few minutes to kind of talk about what they do, some of the commonalities. These are the geographic regions around the world. You can see where they're located in this map, where there's a higher proportion of octogenarians, nonagenarians, and a high concentration of centenarians. They're marked by low rates of chronic disease, lower levels of obesity. They have sustained levels of physical and cognitive function, and they have a strong social and community structure. So who are these people in a little bit more detail? Well, these are just a little bit of the pictures of them. Okay. And so the first group we're talking about is Okinawans. Okinawa in Japan, some people call it the land of immortals. They have the highest number of centenarians per capita in the world. In terms of their broad overview of their lifestyle, it's a plant-forward diet with moderate amounts of animal protein. They practice, I may butcher the name, hara hachibu, which is eating until you're approximately 80% full and then stopping, which is challenging, especially at great restaurants like we have in this hotel. They also have lifelong social support groups. Their physical activity is constant throughout their life, and you you often see individuals practicing Tai Chi even in their 90s. Then we have our very own Sardinia, Italy, where these individuals, again, this is a common theme, practice a plant-forward diet with occasional livestock meats, eat high levels of sourdough bread, wine, and coffee. Not too much wine, but some wine. And so their shepherding lifestyle leads them to engage in physical activity throughout the day. And of course, they have a close-knit community as well. Then we go to Loma Linda, California. Again, plant-rich lifestyle. Vegetable, fruits, legumes, whole grains, nuts, and notably high intake of water. This is also a theme. They also intentionally rest every seventh day for a 24-hour period, many of these individuals. So they recognize the Sabbath and take 24 hours to just rest. They engage in regular exercise and they abstain from alcohol and recreational drugs. Then Acaria, Greece. They follow mostly a Mediterranean diet, moderate amounts of goat meat, milk and cheese, daily natural movements, walking in the hills, gardening, manual tasks. They have deep social connections and frequent community gatherings. They also have a midday rest marked by a nap. Then Nicoya, Costa Rica, again, a plant-based diet, which is abundant in rice, beans, mango, and papaya, some meat and some dairy, so not exclusively vegetarian. They have a strong sense of purpose, again, lifelong physical labor, close-knit, multi-generational family structure, and reportedly high calcium and magnesium in their drinking water. Okay, so just showing those five, you probably started to pick up on some of the common characteristics of each of these locations, but I thought I would just drive home the points of what I found to be the 9 common characteristics that you saw across the board. And this infographic kind of displays it. They had a high sense of belonging. They moved naturally throughout the day. They had a strong sense of purpose. Often there was a downshift, a nap in the afternoon or early bedtime. Many followed the 80% rule, so they stopped eating before they got 100% full. There was a slant towards a plant-based diet. Some, but not all, had moderate levels of alcohol intake, wine usually, positive outlook on life, and they maintained strong family ties. And then just to drive home that point, I put it in another infographic because I think these nine are worth remembering as much as possible, moving naturally throughout the day. So it's not high intensity activity that these individuals, but it was high frequency, low intensity, frequent movement. They all had a strong sense of purpose, downshifting, 80% rule, plant slant, wine at 5. So, moderate daily alcohol intake in some of the cases. Strong positive social ties, loved ones first, they remain near their family, and strong sense of belonging, either faith-based or social-based. Okay, so those are some of the clues that we can see in terms of their lifestyle. Now, why might this lead them to live longer, healthier lives? And I'll just kind of briefly talk about some of the potential reasons here. And I said this about the diets mostly, but I didn't mention in detail the diets being polyphenol rich. And we know that high intake of polyphenols can have a number of health benefits at the cellular level. One of the reasons that may or may not be talked about as much is because of the hormetic challenge or the hormetic effects that these polyphenols have on the body. They actually can activate cellular stress resistance pathways similar to calorie restriction or intermittent fasting. And that can also result in enhancing antioxidant defenses, reduce levels of inflammation, promotes autophagy, and activates cellular repair. They also can lead to a healthier microbiome. And with a healthier microbiome, we see more diversity, greater abundance of healthy probiotics and prebiotics, increase in pathogen defense, and then having positive effects at the metabolic level, ultimately affecting lipid metabolism and potentially reducing the risk of obesity through that pathway. And then there's more and more research suggesting this microbiome interacts with our metabolic and epigenetic pathways to ultimately promote a healthy or extend health span. With these microbial metabolites, they reduce levels of inflammation, improve metabolic balance, and promote mitochondrial efficiency, lower levels of oxidative stress. So you can see where their healthy exposome is marked by lower levels of pollution, decreased stress, increased natural environments. Then they have a diversity of beneficial probiotics within their microbiome that can have effects in the epigenome, ultimately stimulating healthier mitochondrial function and biogenesis, lower levels of oxidative damage, promoting a healthier telomeres and ideally healthier quality of life with age. Then there's also the effect of this 80% full concept. We've talked extensively in the past about the benefits of calorie restriction and intermittent fasting. And just to kind of note that most of the folks in the blue zone follow this 80% rule. So they, in effect, practice a form of calorie restriction, if you will. And so they don't encounter many of the negative effects of excessive calorie intake that we see in many westernized societies. Physical activity, high frequency, low intensity, and it's usually walking, but it can be other forms. I just wanted to highlight this slide that what was identified in this article by Herbert 2022 of the types of activities engaged by folks in the blue zones, but you can see walking is a big part of it, and farming. And we know that walking is not just energy expenditure, but it has a tremendous effect on multiple pathways and leads to lowered levels of oxidative stress and inflammation and all sorts of positive effects that promote healthy aging. So that alone is probably one activity we could take away from these findings. What I think is occurring, if I had to guess, is that they live what it would be considered a hormetic lifestyle and is in line with the practice of lifestyle medicine, which is in contrast, unfortunately, to the way many people in westernized society are living, where they eat unhealthy foods that are low in polyphenols, and they are sedentary much of the day, leading to higher levels of oxidative stress, which is in contrast to many of the lifestyle habits of the folks in the blue zones. They also have, as I noted, strong social cohesion, and that can lead to psychosocial buffering, so that they actually have a shift towards more of a parasympathetic tone rather than being in fight or flight throughout the day, like many of us or many folks in other areas. That can also lead to improvements in, lower cortisol, improvements in cardiovascular and immune function. Last but not least, they have a strong sense of purpose, which I think may be underrated because that again can regulate stress response, serve as a buffer against mental health challenges, supports cognitive health, encourages the healthier lifestyle choices, as well as adherence to medical advice. And now in the next few sessions, I want to highlight the importance of, although these studies and these characteristics of folks in the blue zones are interesting, what we ultimately need is studies in older adults to better understand their specific lifestyle habits through prospective cohort studies as well as intervention studies. And there's a lot that we can learn and ultimately test in potentially in scalable interventions. Some of these effects may be synergistic. We just don't know. But the good thing is much of what I talked about can be delivered in clinical settings, community programs, home-based digital platforms. And we now have the technology to measure dietary quality, sleep regularity, patient-reported well-being. Just as a note about sleep, one of the things I may not have mentioned is that they often eat dinner relatively early and have regular sleep-wake cycles so that they're embedded at a relatively early time frame and up early. And then just to make the point how important and multidimensional we are, you can exercise, drink only water, eat healthy, and take vitamins, but if you don't pay attention to what's going on in your heart and your head, you won't experience optimal health. So with that, I'll say thank you for your attention.